Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TV video. We're here to go over the top 5 current builds in the new 10.3 patch. As usual, there will be shifts over the course of the patch, so keep that in mind as the meta may change and new builds may pop up. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting news to come. The interest form is down below, so feel free to fill that out if you'd like to compete. Also, be sure to follow our Giant Slayer TV social medias and check out our amazing cast in the description. Alright, with that said, let's get back into the video. Patch 10.3 had quite a few balanced tweaks, though nothing was majorly buffed or nerfed, so a lot of the builds from 10.2 are still viable. The major change that's affected the meta is the removal from spatula from all carousel rounds. This has made an impact on the meta as it's much harder to play builds that require a spatula item. Let's get right into our number 5 composition for 10.3, Rangers. While this list isn't in a particular order of strength, Rangers are definitely at the top right now. For Rangers, getting Crystal and Poison in the late game to round the build out really pushes this composition to the top. The core of the build remains the same, with Ashe and Twitch being your 2 carries, with Taric, Amumu, and Singed as your preferred frontline champion. What has shifted in 10.3 is your item prioritization, as Infinity Edge was nerfed quite heavily while Static Shiv was buffed by 5 damage, which still works great as your main carry with Infinity Edge, but more commonly played now is at least one Static Shiv with Rage Blade on Ashe, with her being the primary carry. Give secondary items to Twitch like Infinity Edge and try to get a Guardian Angel on Taric, as it increases his ability to survive by quite a bit. Singed of course wants his book, so give him the Morellonomicon if you're able to get it in the late game. The most important aspect of Rangers to keep in mind is that it is heavily contested and that it is a very expensive composition. Taric and Singed are arguably more important for this build than your backline, so getting to level 8 and finding them is an absolute must, and without them, you're not likely going to get top 4. That said, if you're able to play the full build with 4 Ranger, 2 Crystal, 3 Poison, you're on a fast track for a first place finish. Moving on to the next top build, let's talk about our number 4 pick, Predators. Predators have been in and out of the meta for most of set 2, and in 10.3, they got a bunch of small tweaks that buffed them. They're also a composition that doesn't require a spatula and only needs a few expensive champions to be played. The typical build that you're going to be using is Kog'Maw, Rek'Sai, and Skarner as your Predators, with Singed and Twitch for Poison. Round out the composition with Ashe for Crystal and Nocturne for Steel. It is possible to be more flexible and play Mundo over Twitch or Taric over Ashe, but the core of the build is going to be 3 Predator, 3 Poison, 2 Crystal, and 2 Steel. Hyper Rolling is the preferred way to play because Kog'Maw 3 with scaling items is really strong and can carry you into the late game. That said, you don't have to hyper roll, just make sure to scout the lobby and see if anyone is contesting Predators and decide if it's worth rolling or not. Kog'Maw did receive a small damage buff in 10.3 to his ability, which makes him more potent at killing individual units. That buff, combined with giving him a Luden's Echo, is a great way to increase his overall damage output. Static Shiv is also a good item for Kog'Maw because of the scaling on it, and it did just receive a small buff in 10.3. Rek'Sai and Nocturne will be your frontline for Steel alongside Skarner. Position Singed slightly behind your frontline so he doesn't get bursted down. Morellonomicon is a must-have for Singed, so after prioritizing your Kog'Maw item, try to get a book for the running man. As mentioned before, scouting is absolutely critical for this build because anyone contesting your champions really slows down your power spike, so always make sure to scout. Next on our list is the number 3 build, Shadow and Inferno. The composition is still going strong at 10.3, and not much has changed other than a small nerf to 6 Shadow. Unfortunately, it was a build with a transition that used a spatula to make one of your champions an Inferno for an easier time getting 6 Inferno. While it is possible to do, it's not nearly as flexible as it was with how hard it is to find a spatula right now. Annie also received a nerf to her 1-star, but a buff to her 2-star, so keep that in mind when playing her, as her ultimate is slightly weaker as a 1-star. The core champions of this build are still Kindred as your main carry, with Sion and Malzahar as your other 2 Shadow units. Varus and Annie are the typical other units to play to get your build with the base 3 Inferno, 3 Shadow. From there, you have several options by continuing with Shadow and going for 6 Shadow, or leaning more into the Inferno by going 6 Inferno. As mentioned, 6 Inferno is a bit harder to pull off, though certainly doable, especially on the Inferno map where you can play a Qiyana. Mystic and Summoner is also a great way to play with the basic 3 Inferno, 3 Shadow. Yorick pairs well with Annie and Malzahar, or you can swap out Malzahar to play a Master Yi with another Mystic. Kindred is still the main item carry, but she can honestly use many different items. Rageblade, Deathcap, Jeweled Gauntlet, Seraphs, and RFC are all great on her. Sion is the main frontline, so look to give him items such as Guardian Angel or Bramble Vest. If you do manage to get a Spatula all going for this build, Sion is a great champion to turn into an Inferno. Alright, let's get into our number 2 build, Summoner and Assassin. This is another composition that has been in and out of the meta, and in 10.3, it's so far been shown to do quite well. Commonly referred to as some sin, this build has changed slightly in 10.3 compared to its previous renditions. Most notably, Azir is now the main carry for the game as he benefits from the Summoner buff, provides Desert with Kha'Zix, and pairs very well with Karma. Give him a Rageblade once you get him 2-starred with a Karma 2, and he can carry you towards the late game. Look for Yorick as your frontline with a Guardian Angel, and Annie can work in place of Zed until you're able to 2-star him. Azir is definitely the most important champion for this build in your mid game, so scout to see how contested he is as he's currently a popular meta unit. Qiyana is also a great mid game champion and serves as the 3rd assassin for the build along with Kha'Zix and Zed. It can be difficult to find Zed, especially Zed 2, so don't worry too much about finding him if you're unable to, as Azir, Yorick, and Annie can do well enough in the mid game and later. If you do find Zed, the items haven't changed, so look for Redemption, Dragon's Claw, with the 3rd item being flexible, though Guardian Angel is always a good choice. Look to play Mystic at level 8 with this build, as Karma is great at boosting Azir, and Soraka can be played for a 2nd light champion. Taric, Amumu, and Malphite are all great choices for your front line. This build is also flexible if you find a Spatula, and you can make either Azir or Zed a light unit and play 3 light. Alternatively, if you find a Spatula early enough in the game, you can swap your build over to 6 lights with Azir. While Assassin is part of the composition, it's not a big deal if you're unable to get 3 Assassins in. Focus on finding and playing Azir, Yorick, Karma, and Kha'Zix, as those 4 are the core of this build. For our final build, we have our number 1 spot going to a new yet familiar playstyle, Yasuo Carry. At the moment, this build doesn't have any clever names given to it, but as the title suggests, it's a composition built around Yasuo as the primary carry. This build sprung up on the first day of 10.3 as kind of a meme, but it has started to solidify itself as a real contender in the meta. Yasuo received a small buff to his mana that made it so he can cast a bit earlier in the fight and cast more often, so the idea is to build using his ultimate to jump onto high priority targets and kill them in 1 or 2 ultimates. The way that his ability functions is that he targets the champion with the most items, which is often the carry unit, as they usually hold 3 full items by the mid game, which is where the build really shines. The supporting champions for this build are Sivir, Azir, or Kha'Zix, Janna, and Karma as the core, with Yasuo as the primary carry. Azir or Kha'Zix will be the secondary carry, and you can play a multitude of other units to fill out the composition at levels 7 and 8. The core of this build is 2 Blade Master, 2 Cloud, 2 Mystic, and 2 Desert. Lunar is a good addition as Karma is one of the Mystics, and Qiyana is a great addition for more backline pressure on the Cloud map as she gets you up to 3 Cloud. Malphite and Taric are also great for your front line, and you can look to run 4 Blade Master with Master Yi and Aatrox. If you're able to get a Spatula, you can make Azir or Kha'Zix a Blade Master, so you can fit in 4 Blade Master earlier. Essentially, this build has a lot of flexibility since the core is only 5 champions. Itemization for Yasuo is also flexible, though Hand of Justice is the best item you can grab for him, followed by Guardian Angel and either a Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, or Titanic Hydra. After that, look to give your secondary carry 1 or 2 items, which can be Rageblade for Azir or Bloodthirster and Seraphs for Kha'Zix. Any leftover components can be placed on your front line to make them a bit harder to kill. Late game win condition for this build is going to be Yasuo 3, though if you're healthy enough with a good economy, you can go to level 9 and just play strong legendary champions to close the game out. That is it for our top 5 builds for 10.3. Before we wrap this up though, let's talk about 2 additional builds as honorable mentions. First up, we have Lights. Lights were a central part of the meta in 10.2, but after quite a few nerfs to different parts of the composition, including the removal of Spatula off the carousel, this build has fallen off a bit and is harder to make work consistently. That said, it can still be strong, especially if you're able to get your hands on the coveted spatula. Yorick 2 is still the most important champion of this build, so make sure you try to grab him and slap a Guardian Angel on it. As for the carry in lights, there's a few options. Vayne, though she did receive a nerf to her attack speed in 10.3, can still function well enough as your primary carry with a Rage Blade. Lucian can do work as well, but pairing the two carries together gives you the best result. Azir is great if you get a spatula and is currently the best way to get a first place finish when running light. Our next honorable mention goes to Ocean Mages. Another great composition from 10.2 that got hit a bit hard by the changes to spatula in 10.3. Ocean Mages can still do well in the meta, but requires a bit of luck as you have to hit the proper champions in order to do well. Because it's much harder to get a spatula, the previous ways of running mages isn't as easy, so it's important to find a Brand 2 and Malphite 2 to stabilize as Ocean Mage. 10.2, it was possible to do okay even with just a Malphite 1. As long as you had a Mage cap on him, the amount of CC the build would do would make up for the lack of damage. Since spatula is harder to find, it's back to running the classic 3 Mage, 4 Ocean style of this composition, though it is common to run Talia and have 4 Mages and 4 Ocean. Mage cap Malphite is still the best win condition with this build, but if you're unable to find that, you can look to play 6 Mages at level 8 and play for level 9 to get Malphite in with Nami replacing Thresh. Lux, specifically Ocean Lux, is also a strong win condition for this build if you're able to get her 2-star. And with that, we're at the end of the top compositions video for 10.3. What has been working for you guys so far in this patch? Have any of you tried out the Yasuo Carry composition yet? Let us know in the comments below how the patch has been going for you. Also, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you all in our next video.